Halley again, and welcome back to the Throw Center. Today I wanted to go over a topic that I've been getting a lot of emails about and some comments on my YouTube channel, so I thought maybe I'd cover the block in a little bit greater detail today. Alright, so the block is designed to convert horizontal, linear speed and momentum into something that's more vertical or a diagonal direction of force. Okay, so when we throw, we can get elevation in the javelin. So how do we set up for the block? Well, I believe that our legs are designed to take force, essentially straight up and down, right? When we're standing here, your legs are actually holding a fair amount of weight. When you set up for the block, same basic concept, but we're going to be taking that force moving towards the ground. So our leg is designed to handle that force much better in this position than a position where our foot's turned in either of these directions. So this is the best way to handle a solid block. Now, another point that the angle that your leg comes in at. You need your hip behind your knee and then your knee behind your heel. If your leg is too straight up and down, you're not going to be able to take any force into the ground. You're just going to go right over the top of it, essentially right through it. Horizontal movement's going to stay horizontal, right? Unless some other force acts on it. Well, we're trying to generate that by driving into the ground. The ground's not going to move, so we need to be able to transfer the energy that we just drove into the ground and bring it back up our body and then redirect it into the javelin. So we've got to hold that leg solidly enough that when you hit it, there's this little burst of energy that then shocks through your body, and then you transfer it up into the javelin. All right, so one other piece to the block that you need to be aware of, and that is how your upper body is positioned in order to help deflect the energy. Because, honestly, if your upper body is not ready for this block, then the block's not going to really matter. You've got to have your upper body set. So for me, I got to set my body up. So my upper body is going to be slightly left of my block. My right hip's going to be slightly out here so that the javelin can come over the top. So when I deflect that energy, I can deflect it to a high point here. Now I have seen a few folks hit their block and they're sitting on the outside here, and I've seen the javelin deflect off to the side. I have seen them get a little bit of height on it, but I think that a lot of that is using their muscles to help elevate the javelin, and maybe some other components to how they're rolling through it. But for me, I believe that if you're moving in a straight line, that's the natural direction of force, and so we're going to just keep moving in that natural direction, adding just a little bit to it. So when I come into the block, I really want to be slightly left of the block, my hips sitting out just a little bit, so that when I hit that block, I come up to a high point so that energy gets redirected into the javelin. Okay, so some of the common mistakes that I see in this is I see a bent left knee, right? So a javelin thrower comes in and they end up giving on that knee, and then they end up either all that energy goes out through here, or they end up trying to straighten it up, and you'll see them lift up off the ground and elevate. And I've seen some throwers where they're throwing, you can do a freeze frame and their entire body is up off the ground. Their feet aren't even touching the ground, and the javelin's still sitting in their hands. So in order to get leverage in the throw, you've got to keep your feet down and then help redirect that force. So the other common mistake is a leg that comes in sideways, one of these directions. And like I said, your knee is not really designed to take force that way, neither is your ankle. So the best thing to do is come in straight. Another common mistake that I see, and this is probably the most common mistake that I see, and that is a twisting movement that goes around your block. So, and honestly, I see a lot of it with an upper body turn versus a lower body turn. So a thrower will pull really far with their left side, and that creates this rotational movement around their body. Well, that causes their entire torso to start turning. And when your torso turns, you'll notice that it turns and pulls you away from your block. So there's actually this movement here on your leg where it actually turns. Well, like I said before, if you're not coming directly into that block, your leg's not really designed to take that force. So if your force is gradually starting to pull that hip and pull that leg, turning it out here, you're going to notice that leg is either going to stand up on you or it's just going to cave and that knee's going to bend. And typically this happens at such a fast pace that you probably won't even notice it until you look at it in really slow motion video. But I see this all the time, this rotational movement that pulls that hip outside a little bit, and that creates this movement where they have to stand up and come over the top of it. You know, like I said, my belief is that you want to deflect that energy up over the top, not on the outside. I'm not saying you can't throw far that way. I'm just saying the natural direction of force is forward. So let's try and deflect it as best we can upwards. I just want to make a quick note on Javelin Spikes. Now, I run into a lot of javelin throwers who come out and they throw with running spikes, and we'll put a J heel on their shoe just to help them get a little bit more traction from their heel. You know, if you learn how to block appropriately, you're going to need a good solid javelin spike. So I mean, I've got the Adidas here. I've worn Nikes. I've worn Asics. I think I've worn a couple other brands, but so far these have been my favorite because of how flexible the shoe is, because I can still run in this, but it's also very stable. So when I actually hit my block, I feel like I'm nice and solid. I'm not shifting around in my shoe. The shoe's not, you know, flexing at all. So anyway, but a javelin shoe, it's got spiked heel, spikes in the front, and it should give you more stability when you come into that block. If you use a J heel, I think you're going to quickly realize once you learn how to block that it's just not going to be good enough. You're going to have to shift over and, you know, spend a little bit more money to get a real javelin spike. So some of the drills I like to do with the block is you know, take advantage of some of the gravel that we have. You can do this probably on some other surfaces that are a little bit more slippery. You might even be able to do it like on a gym floor with your socks on. Maybe just, you know, have your block leg with a sock, and then actually have a shoe on your right foot so that you can get a little bit of sliding movement. But the idea here is that you just set yourself up and you're just trying to get the dirt to shift or the gravel to shift underneath your feet a little bit. So I've got some pretty thick gravel here, and I'm just going to learn how to stick the leg out and then run into it so that I see I've got a little bit of that shift in my weight, and I'll just kind of set up again, and I'm just going to shift into it again. Now I'm trying to get my hip to actually help move a little bit. I don't want to just, you know, expand out here, although you could just for the blocking sensation, but ultimately you're trying to get your hip to then drive into your block. So in this case, I'm trying to actually do it the correct way. So I'm trying to get my hip to shift around and get that weight to shift to my front foot, and you can see my left foot starts to shift out in front of me. I can do this on the runway with Javelin Spikes as well, and you should look for the sensation of your toes getting shoved to the end of your shoes. But here it's nice because you can really see, you know, that foot travel, and you can feel and hear it. So you've got a little bit of this, little bit of give, and depending on how thick the gravel is, you know, you can get a pretty big shift. I don't normally like to go that far because then you end up leaving the weight in the middle and you end up separating your legs here. I still want my weight to shift from my back foot to my front foot, so I want a little bit less shift, like so. Okay. Another drill that I like to do is what I call the hill drill. Around the throw center we have this nice berm that goes up and down the outside of the field here, and so we can kind of take advantage of that hill and take advantage of gravity to help us learn how to block. So I've got my spikes on here so I can have a little bit more traction. You can do this with flats, but in most cases you're going to end up sliding too much, especially if the grass is wet. Today the sun is out, but the dew is out, so it's a little bit slippery on the grass today. I've set myself up sort of on the crest of the hill where my right foot's going to be, and then my left foot's going to be sitting down the hill when I'm ready to take my block. So essentially the drill is the same as we did in the other drills. You're just trying to get force to move into that block leg, and you're trying to run into it in that straight line. So I just start off at the crest of the hill. I'm just going to balance here, bend that back leg. That penultimate step, you've got to be really soft on that landing and allow the hip to travel through. So we're going to try and keep our left leg out, primed and ready to take the block. So I'm going to collapse on that back leg, get my hip to travel through, and I'm going to run into that block. Now I can add a little fake throw to this if I want. So I can get my weight to shift from my back foot to my front foot, and then from the lower energy from my lower half to transfer up to my upper half. So the nice thing about the hill drill is that you've got a little bit of gravity to help you down the hill. So it's not like you have to drive really hard, but being on an incline here, if I stay back just a little bit, I can take that force a lot better into my block. If I teeter into it, where I just put my foot down, maybe my back leg is too tall, and I just kind of teeter into it, then I end up falling over the top of it. So an incorrect throw, often I'll see this, where they sort of teeter into it, and then end up falling over down the hill. If I'm loose, soft on that back foot, I can kind of slide into that block and then redirect the energy from that block up into the javelin. So another angle here, you can kind of see my foot spacing this direction. See my feet are underneath my hips. As I move into that block, my feet are still going to be sort of under my hips. Now the balance point that I like to emphasize is just, you want to stay back, but upper body needs to travel over the block a little bit here when you throw. So I want my hip to be sitting out here, my upper body over to the right or the left just a little bit. That way the jab can be up high over the top. All right, so again, you can do this just by sort of relaxing, settling down on that right foot, and then sliding into the block leg. Don't teeter into it, otherwise you fall over the top. You can also do this drill by getting the arm back just like you were throwing. Soft on the back leg, slide into the block, and roll over the top. And you should be on balance. You should see that your toes get shoved to the end of your shoes, and that your leg is nice on balance here. You don't want to go sideways this direction, and you don't want to rotate around this way. You'll get stuck and you'll end up falling over the top. So be as linear as you possibly can during this process. So one last point I like to make about the block, and that is, don't let the block be something that stops energy or slows down your energy. The block should be something that helps to further accelerate your throw, and should be something that transfers more energy into the javelin than you started. Remember, the last phase of the throw, there has to be an acceleration upon acceleration upon acceleration. So when you finally release the javelin, you've got to be at the peak of acceleration. And I think using a good block can help you further accelerate the javelin all the way to the point of release. All right, well, I think it's going to do it for now. And if you have any other questions, you want them answered online here in my YouTube segment, please send me an email at shalley@coachhalley.com. Drop by, visit my website, www.coachhalley.com. And if you're in the Portland area, please look me up. I have throwing sessions at the Throw Center every weekend, and I also have throwing clinics around the Northwest during the season and off season. So get in touch with me, and hopefully you do well and throw far.